Since his inception to the LCK, Faker has consistently been one of the best mid laners in the world. And in 2025, Faker is facing a familiar difficulty, with a dominating Gen.G firmly in control of both the matchup against T1 and, until recently with their loss against KT, the LCK as a whole. In this video, we're going to explore how Faker is playing a vital role in games, helping to keep T1 alive, and how he's making fighting and macro decisions that can swing the game back in T1's favor, even when it may seem like all hope is lost. So we're going to start this one out at this 16-minute 30 deploy from Faker. And before we get into anything, let's take an overall look at the game state so we can have the context for how Faker is making these decisions. So if we look at the top here, we can see that Gen.G is about 2,000 gold ahead of T1. Now, if we go and have a look at the scoreboard, we can actually see that 2,000 gold of that is actually on just Ruler against Gumayusi. Now, if we look at the items, this hasn't actually translated into items yet because although Ruler is massively ahead, he's still only on one item plus components, right? But with the state of the game and the components that he has, we have to imagine that he's going to be there pretty soon. And for anyone who watches competitive play, you have to know that once an AD carry is an item up over another AD carry, it's really difficult to win team fights, just by virtue of the fact that one side is going to have such a high level of DPS compared to the other. So Ruler is almost this ticking time bomb in this sequence for Gen.G. Now, as far as the benefits for T1, they are up 2 dragons, and they've also got this Rift Herald, so it's clear that they've had a pretty good game as far as those neutral objectives go. Okay, so now that we have the context of the game, knowing that T1 is a little bit behind of Gen.G, let's get into the sequence. Okay, so we'll see that Faker is actually a little bit ahead in tempo over his opponents. And what that means, if we look at the minimap, that Faker is out first, he's based first, so he's going to push in this bottom wave, and he's going to be able to make a small rotation towards mid. Now, he does have to be a little bit careful here, and we'll see him actually clearing this wave very safely. But he is going to get that first clear off, and he's going to kill the wave, and then we'll see Faker rotating up towards middle lane. Now, usually what you do in competitive play is you push that wave in bottom, and then you'll rotate towards mid, and then you'll pay attention to where that next wave is. So on the minimap, we see the next wave is actually at the tier 2 already. So in about 10 seconds, Faker would need to decide to go back bottom. Now, as a solo laner like Faker, you actually also need to pay a little bit of attention to what's going on the other side of the map. Because, you know, if you want to make an attack on the other side of the map, or if the other side of the map is going to move towards you, then that determines whether or not you go back to your lane, or whether or not you go and make an attack, right? And so for Faker here, he can see that there's actually not a lot happening on Doran's side, although Doran is going to have push. But this is where we'll see Faker's really cool decision coming in, where Faker's going to rotate towards mid, and he's actually not going to go back bottom. So we can see now he's going to appear on screen where Faker has rotated all the way mid, and Doran has done the same thing. So we can see Faker here, and in that top left corner we've got Doran there too. So we've got 5 members of Tier 1 attacking this middle of the map. Now, this is really a risky decision in pro play because when you've got 5 people in one area, it means that you're basically not playing the rest of the map, right? So on the minimap, you can see that Sion can get that push in on bottom lane, and then Sion's going to get a move, and someone from T1 might have to go back bottom. And there's actually not immediately like a dive opportunity available, right? T1 has numbers, but Kaiser is coming out of base now with that deadly second item in her inventory. So there's not a heap of opportunities here for T1. But crucially, we'll see Faker make a decision here to use his ultimate just for poke onto Canyon and Chovy. Now this gets a lot of damage down onto the 2 Gen.G members, and then this Rift Herald will come in from Doran onto the tower too, which will put the tower on really low HP. This force is keen to teleport and puts Gen.G sort of in this panic defense, right? And now Gen.G, with some of their members managing this Rift Herald, some of their members low, and Keen coming in almost from behind T1, is in a panic defense. And we'll see the panic come through from Keen in a second, where he's going to walk into mid for the defense, but he's actually not got any members with him to support him, and he's going to lose his flash here. So we can see how Faker knows that he's on a time limit. He's in a rush, so he rotates over and does the poke so that it kind of blunts the knife on the Gen.G next attack. Now, for the end of the sequence, unfortunately, this one will go south for T1 because Doran's going to see, I think, an opportunity here. He's going to go for it, and it's not going to pay off. T1 will get kited out, and they'll lose this fight. But we can already see just from the whole sequence how Faker made a really positive contribution with his macro to this play. Our second timestamp, we are going to kick off at the 21-minute 30 mark. Now, we can see Gen.G has extended their gold lead to about 3k, but again, that entire lead is sitting on Ruler. And in a second, we'll see Ruler completing that third item. So Ruler is now like an absolute raid boss in this game, right? He is so strong. As far as the next objective goes, Atakan is the next objective on the map. And if we pause now, we can have a look at how T1 is setting up for that objective. So firstly, there's been a shift from T1. Now what that means is that Renekton is based and he's walked all the way up mid and he's taken over mid lane. Now for T1, they're putting both Gumayusi and Faker on one part of the map together. And this means now that for the case of T1, but also for Gen.G, both teams are only playing this side of the map, right? And they've got 5 members of their team on the side of the map. So that tells us both teams want to contest this major objective in this Atacon, right? Okay, playing ahead, we can see how this setup goes. T1 has tempo, right? They're here first. They base first. So T1 is going to get control over this Atacon area. And we'll see Faker putting his ball out in a second in this tri-brush. You know, looking for some poke onto the members of Gen.G as they do the retake. Now, Gen.G is stronger, right? Gen.G is stronger. So if they do everything properly, then they should be able to retake this space. And that's exactly what we'll see from Gen.G here in a second, where Aurora is going to be able to get that push on mid lane. So we see Aurora now just finishing the push on mid lane. Renekton has to catch it, and T1 has to be afraid of a flank, right? T1 has to be afraid of a flank from Aurora here. And what that'll then do, that Aurora threat, will force the members of T1 to retreat, right? Which will give access to this space for the members of Gen.G. Okay. Playing ahead, we'll see that pan out. T1 will try to hold on to this space for a little bit, but ultimately that flank from Chovy is going to come in and T1 will concede the space. But this is where we'll see something really cool from T1, because T1 has dragged all of the members of Gen.G down towards bottom, right? Gen.G is sending a lot of resources in here because, you know, they know that all of T1 is sitting on this bottom side. And if we pay attention to the mini-map and we watch Doran, Doran is going to use that space which has been opened up, and he's going to jump the dragon wall and he's going to sneak in behind Gen.G. So we're now watching Secret Agent Doran getting in behind Gen.G whilst the other members of T1 are in this standoff. Okay, so I'm going to pause in a second and analyze the full setup for both teams now that the fight is about to begin. So we've got Chovy, who thinks that he's just on a flank, right, of T1, where he's really limiting the space which Faker's in. You know, Faker can't move forwards because of where Chovy is. And we've also got Gumayusi and Keria down here off screen, and they're both in a pretty safe situation. Faker can't get killed himself unless he walks forward, but with Doran now being behind Chovy, Chovy's position is completely exposed, and Chovy's going to have to retreat, right? Which will then open up more of that space for Faker. So we'll see this play out with Doran engaging, going onto Chovy and taking Chovy's flash out. And then we'll see the other members of T1 moving in. Now, the fight here actually is getting a little bit ugly, right? Doran is overextended a little bit to go into the fight. And the members of Gen.G are really difficult to hit right now. You know, they can hit Geen, but he's Scion. I mean, that's what he does. He gets hit. And they can potentially hit Canyon a little bit. But, you know, very strong members of Gen.G are in a relatively safe position right now. And it's very interesting how T1 plays this out. We'll see Owner go in here and pop his ultimate. And we'll also see Carrier flash the wall too. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make more space so that the members of Gen.G, sorry, the other members of T1, the carries, will have space to walk forwards in as well. But Carrier is going to get completely one shot here, and Owner is going to successfully do his job and make the space. But there's been a ton of damage go down from Gen.G, and they've killed a member, and you know the fight is not looking great for T1 here. T1 will pick up the kill onto Canyon, and now T1 is in a position where they're losing this fight, right? So they have to start kiting out. Faker has to run, you know, he's going to run up. Gumayushi's going to run backwards here. And Gen.G, for all intents and purposes, has won this engagement. But, like all teams, when they think they're winning, Gen.G will overchase this for the kill. Ruler will get killed by Gumayushi. And now both teams are very, very low. And also, this objective is really low. So both teams are in a really tough position right now. And the objective is low, so it's intense. And this is where we'll see the super cool play from Faker, where Faker's going to teleport to this ward. He still has his flash up in the fight, and we'll see off screen that Faker is going to use this TP in, and we'll see Chovy die in a second, and then Faker's also going to pick up this objective. Okay, so that's all for this fight, but it's a really cool way of seeing how Faker deployed towards bottom. The other members of T1 dragged Gen.G down, created that space for Doran to get behind, and then once Doran, you know, used that space to have the flank, that it made a much more fair fight, even though this fight should have, based on items, been a pretty clear sweep for Gen.G. Okay, so I'll leave the detailed analysis at those two sequences for this video, but if you watch the rest of the game, there are still many really cool decisions that T1 makes and that Faker makes, which allow them to come back in this game. And as far as the matchup goes, although right now it's looking very one-sided for Gen.G, I just want to remind everyone that this is almost the same state that the matchup was in last year too, with Gen.G dominating LCK and the matchup against T1. But in the end, T1 was able to become the world champions. And I think that it's this mindset from Faker and from T1 where they're able to find small gaps, they're able to find creative opportunities. So even though they may not have the best laning phases in the LCK, when the huge pressure is on and people don't play so aggressively early on into the game, T1 still maintains their style and they still have some of, if not, you know, the best team fighting in the whole world. Okay, I'll finish off the video there, but I just want to say thanks to everyone for watching. And if you want to learn more about LOL and analysis of the game, I'm going to start uploading to my Patreon again. So if that's of interest to you, then you can find me on there as well. Okay, thank you very much and see you next time.